Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the WatchRolling.com podcast, a veteran-owned podcast that focuses on watch collecting with the goal of helping veterans. My name is Jason, and I'll be your host. And welcome to episode 1. A little background about myself. A retired Navy veteran, did about 20 years, primarily a ship guy, did a lot of tours on ships, did a little time on ground as well. I'm a relatively new watch collector, I'd say within the last 24 months, and it's been quite a fun journey, and I've learned quite a lot, but there's a lot more to learn. So you might be asking yourself, why a podcast about watch collecting? Well, I always felt like if I had a voice in a hobby, I'd want to be able to help fellow veterans. I mean, the hobby is the hobby. It's fun, but I wouldn't want to do anything like this unless I had a way to help fellow veterans and give something back to our community there. And oftentimes those two communities merge. So, the focus of this podcast is going to be on watch collecting. I'm going to try to offer you, tips and tricks, point you in the way of some resources. But the overall goal of the podcast is to help my fellow veterans. And I'll do the same thing like I would do with watches. The way that the podcast will go is, there'll be separate segments, but the veteran helping segment will always be first. Because I feel that's the priority, is to help fellow veterans. And if I can do that, even if it's just one, it'd be worthwhile for me in doing this podcast. So let's get started with some veteran-related news. So the first thing I'd like to talk about is an excellent resource that I know about, and it's called ONET Online Crosswalks, specifically the military crosswalks. Now, I don't know if any of you have retired or separated from the military, or you're getting ready to, and if you ever had a problem like trying to, translate what you did in the military into civilian, terminology or verbiage, so you can actually get your point across as far as what you accomplished in your military career. I know that was a big problem for me initially. Being a firefighter, not everything crosses over. ONET's online military crosswalks, and I'll include all the links in the show notes, is a tool that can very much help you define what it is that you did in the military and put it in terms that will relate to more of a civilian field when you do your resume. Now, it's not a tool that will solve your resume for you. It's just a tool that will help you do that. You start to get managerial, supervisory, skills that you develop, or tools. And it's nice to be able to quantify that and put it inside of a resume so you can speak highly of yourself to your, potential employers. So, crosswalks is pretty easy. When you go there, there'll be the military crosswalk section on ONET. And now they have it listed as the military occupation classification. For us in the Navy, it's the Navy enlisted classification. So NECs, you can put in verbiage as far as what your rate was or your MOS. But for me, it would be damage controlman, or for someone that could be an operations specialist or a builder if they're in the CVs or stuff like that. You just type it in. Or if you have an actual Navy enlisted classification or an MOS number, you can type that in as well. You hit enter, and then the jobs that best match that will pop up. At that point, you just click it and you're in. And once you get in, you're going to see a whole slew of information. There's going to be stuff like details about tasks that you've done, skills, knowledge, and methods, education requirements, related occupations, and wage trends, stuff like that. That's all going to be there just in a long list. Some of them are expandable too. You'll see the top 5 items in each section, and you can just click a little plus icon. It'll expand it more. And I don't want to go too down in the weeds, because in the show notes, I'll put some screenshots in there so everybody can see what I'm talking about, and I'll add the links. But, there's stuff that you realize that you haven't, there's stuff that I forgot that I even did, like I said before. So, when it comes to detailing your task, well, for me, let's just use an instructor. I was an instructor at one time, develop training materials. You're talking lesson topic guides, curriculum development, all this stuff that you did. And there are jobs for that out there. And if you don't capture that in your resume, you might even forget that you did it, and miss out on a good opportunity at a good paying job because you forgot that you that you conducted tasks like developing training materials. Certain skills like instructing. Instructing is a skill. In the Navy, I don't know about other services, but in the Navy, you go to a special school for that, and you get a Navy enlisted classification, and it's a whole series of steps, and it is an actual skill. It's one that I've never really forgotten since I've got it. I could pretty much get up in front of a room and teach anybody almost anything, as long as I have a a lesson topic guide to go off of. Knowledge, for the instructor job, for example, you could have some education and training principles and methods for curriculum and training design. Let's just say that you handled weapons. Maybe you have, weapons, firearm safety. Let's say that you were an administrative type person, that you would have an understanding of drafting memorandums and official correspondence between people. Education requirements, like sometimes for some jobs that you do in the military, an equivalent job in the civilian world requires some kind of education requirement. So they'll list that. I know for my instructor Navy enlisted classification, back in the day, it gave you about 18 college credits. So, it's kind of a hint that it does segue into something that's going to need some kind of certification later if you want to be a teacher. The related occupations section is pretty cool. It lays out occupations that are similar to that. So, I guess maybe if you were a dispersing or payroll type person, they would have some related occupations, et cetera, et cetera. And then there's a wage trend section, which I mentioned earlier. That section is really cool. You can put in your location information and it gives you like trend analysis of wage trends in the area for the job that you're interested in. And so that's ONET online, Crosswalk, specifically the military section in a nutshell. There are other Crosswalk sections for some tradesperson stuff and et cetera, but I'm going to concentrate on the military one, since this is the overall goal of the podcast, is to help my fellow veterans. But it is a great little website. And like I said, I'll put the show notes, I'll put the links in the show notes and some screenshots to kind of help you navigate through. Now, I want to close this section by saying that this website will not, like I said, solve your resume problems, but it does provide you, some mental prompts for work that you have done and helps you capture it. So little things that you might have done, take a second, stop and think about how often you did that, add some numbers. I'm a big advocate of putting, a cause and effect in your resume as well as numbers. So if you instructed a lot of people or, drafted so many memorandums and you caused a reduction in, administrative errors or something like that, it's important to capture that stuff in your resume because, a lot of employers are going to want to see that you actually made a difference with the work that you did. And there's no harm in, tooting your own horn when it comes to that. All right. The next section, watch related news. So today is March 28th. So you're going to probably get this released on the 31st, but Swatch and Omega just had a release and everybody's talking about it. I'll include the link in the show notes for this one as well. And what I got to say is the hype was pretty real. Omega Speedmaster was a collaboration between Omega and Swatch. And they basically made some affordable around the $260 USD range, not limited edition Speedmasters. And they're made out of a composite material. It was called bioceramic plastic. And it has we looked at some of the ingredients. There was some castor and stuff in there. It's pretty cool. It looks halfway decent. There's 11 models based on all the missions in space, quote unquote. There was a huge churn as far as people waiting in lines and to get stuff done and get stuff, and people trying to sell them before they even came out on eBay for crazy, insane amounts. But, Swatch came out a little bit later and basically said, hey, look, we're going to sell these online relatively soon. And they're not a limited edition. So you'll be able to get them, and at that point I was like, well, I'm not driving anywhere. I'll just wait till they get up online. My wife was super interested in the Sun mission one, which is yellow. And there's a Mercury mission one that's just this beautiful gray. Oh man, so nice. And for $260 USD, I think that's a pretty good price. They were released in the stores on 26 March. There were select locations across the world, and the closest one to me was like about 5.5 hours away. So that would have been a hike. And then they had limited numbers inside the stores, and then they initially said there was going to be 2 per person, but then they made it 1 per person. So that kind of changed the dynamic of what could be picked up. But I think they were trying to help eliminate, people flipping them and selling them on the secondary market for too much money. So my thoughts. Well, I like the overall idea of the watch. I didn't really dig all the color schemes, but there's 11 of them, right? Are you going to dig all 11 color schemes? I know if I bought a Toyota Camry, I wouldn't dig all the colors of the Camry model. So I don't think I would dig all the colors of these. But I think that's the fun also in the whole model. There's 11 different ones to choose from. If you like 4 of them, you can get yourself 4 little, bioceramic Speedmasters and wear them on the weekends or just jazz up your outfit, whatever way you want. There's a little something for everyone. As far as being in the military goes, I think it'd be a fun watch to wear on Liberty. Usually I know the uniform requirements have loosened up a little bit, but back in the day, basically, black watch, silver watch, gold watch, not to distract when you're in uniform. Uh, I probably would still go that route. I mean, if I was still active duty as far as wearing a uniform, but it would be fun. You pack a couple of these, they're quartz, they're going to run, you just make sure your batteries change before you leave. And, you go out on town when your ship pulls into port or whatever, and you have a cool little watch on your wrist. And they're not little, they're 43 millimeter diameter. I would go through the specs, but I mean, there's plenty of people going on YouTube videos on specs. So you can go watch those if you want. From a military aspect, I don't know if the watch looks like it could handle, shipboard life or operations out in the field. It looks halfway decently well made, but I don't know if it looks like it could take a pounding. So that's just something to think about if you're in the military or you live a pretty active lifestyle. It might just be something you want to wear for fun and not something you wear when you're actually having fun, kind of thing. I think it's a great price for someone that's interested in owning a Speedmaster. I mean, you can tell if you like the whole Speedmaster vibe and do so for less than $300 US, United States, US dollars. And that's cool, especially for someone on a budget. I mean, I think about what it was like when I was new in the military. I didn't make a lot of money. And something like a Speedmaster Professional or even an older Speedmaster in the secondary market would have been, a dream. I mean, I could have accomplished it if I'd been disciplined. But I mean, let's be honest, how many young people, when they get their first paycheck, especially like I was coming from a poorer background, if you weren't taught money and responsibility, it could be a long pipe dream. So being able to get a taste of the Speedmaster, get a feel for it, see if you like it. Do you like the overall design? Probably not. And, Oris could have made some more affordable models to make it, slightly more attainable for a young person. You have a Oris Roberto Clemente collaboration with somebody and, you get it for less than $300 and you saved up some, side job money or whatever, and you got this one, and it could be an entryway or, just a little taste to help you save up for the bigger piece down the road. So I think, that was a missed opportunity on Oris's part. And I'm glad that Swatch and Omega came together and did this collaboration because the Speedmaster is a cool watch and it's just going to make it more attainable for people. And I don't think it's going to devalue an Omega Speedmaster because, I mean, really, if you're buying the Omega Speedmaster because of its value and its resale value and not for the fact that you enjoy wearing it, then I personally think you're doing it for the wrong reasons, but I mean, that's just me. And Swatch made it affordable, so they don't have that problem right now with their, Speedmaster collaboration with Omega. So, to close out the episode, I'm trying to keep them between 15 and 20 minutes. They might go a little bit longer. If I have special episodes where I interview somebody, those will be standalone episodes and then go a little bit longer. I have a special feature called A Veteran on Their Watch. I'm going to do one here in the next couple of episodes for the first one. That'll have an accompanying stories. Those can go as long as they want because basically I'm going to interview a veteran, interview them about their cool watch and the story of the watch with them. And some of these watches are pretty cool. Some unusual models, some models that most people haven't heard of or have owned. I'm looking forward to that segment. A little plug for next week's episode is going to cover a school that teaches veterans the art of watchmaking. That's going to be the veteran topic. I've done an article on this before on my page, but I feel like giving it some audio is going to be pretty good. And it'll just reinforce just how great this school is. And then I also picked my second most practical watch brand you can own while on active duty. Stay tuned. So in closing, I just like to say, challenge yourself every day. I mean, try to do more, strive to do more, and become a better version of yourself. I mean, it won't be easy. Trust me, I know. But it'll prepare you for when life challenges you. Because I'm sure we all know, when life challenges you, it's usually not on your playing field. So while you have the ability, go out and push yourself. You won't regret it. And I'd like to do a couple of thank yous in this first episode. And I like to thank, in no particular order, but these are the guys that help me on my way and have had me on their shows and such. And I'll do more thank yous as more episodes go on because there's so many, but we're just going to do it from a podcast aspect is right now. The first people that had me on a podcast was the SoCal Watch Reviews podcast with Miguel and P. Ross. So to Miguel and P. Ross, thank you guys for having me on there. Thanks for giving me an opportunity to express my opinions on stuff. And I look forward to doing it again sometime and hopefully have you guys on one day. I know that P has military in his family and, that's enough of an in for me because it probably does influence some of his watch collecting. I'd like to thank Eric over at Rico's Watches podcast. Eric's given me tons of information, giving me help and let me pick his brain on running a podcast. He does a long form podcast. Lastly, I'd like to thank Adrian from over at Somewhere in Time. You can check him on YouTube, catch him on YouTube. He does great watch reviews, good dude. Adrian made me my intro and outro music, and I'm going to credit him when I put it in. I can never repay you for that, man. And those are my first 3 big, thank yous to the community to give back. There's plenty of more coming. If you didn't hear your name here, please don't be offended. I got you. And I'll shout you out later. I leave you with this. At WatchRolling.com, remember that you make the watch. The watch doesn't make you.